This old guy DIY video has to do with making a no-weld lawn striping attachment that rides behind a riding mower. A hot chick that I know likes that ball field look, so she asked me if I could come up with a way to stripe her lawn for less than 400 bucks. I looked at some of the kits online and I thought, oh, that's not so difficult. So I came up with this thing, and it's a whopping 30 bucks. It takes about 1 hour to build, and then you leave it sit overnight so it has 24 hours for the concrete to harden up. But basically, you start with a tube. I cut this piece of sewer pipe off at 48 inches, and I just used sewer pipe because I happen to have it. PVC Schedule 40 or Schedule 80 is much more rigid and thicker walled material, so it's better than the sewer pipes. So this design demonstrates from an engineering standpoint that it works, but if you have PVC Schedule 40 or Schedule 80 laying around, use that instead. Then I drilled 2 holes where I ran a 5.5 inch quarter 20 carriage bolt through, and on this side I put a washer and nut, and then I put the piece of conduit that I bent, just a couple more washers and a nut, and I put these end caps on. If you don't have a 4-inch hole saw, there's no need to put the end caps on. Actually, when you're pouring the concrete, just put duct tape over this thing all the way around, stand it on end on top of something flat, and it'll work just fine. I drilled the 2 holes. In my case, I came in 6 inches from the end, and I put the bolt in the bottom with a nut on this side. Then I stood the thing up. I mixed up the Quikrete. I poured the Quikrete in, and I let it get as high as the second bolt here. I put the second bolt in. I finished pouring in the Quikrete. Then I put on this last end cap, which again isn't necessary. You can just run the Quikrete up to the top, let it harden, it'll all be fine. And then after the Quikrete had set up, I took my bent pieces of 1/2 inch EMT. I had drilled a 1/4 inch hole in the end. I just stuck it onto that 5.5 inch bolt. As I said, a couple of washers and a nut. Came up here to the front. I had a bunch of these hooks laying around, but this thing was just a little too big when I hooked it on the back of her John Deere. So I just took a grinder and I cut the end off, and now it pivots freely when she's riding. But she cut with it the other night. She was happy with it. I'm going to wait until she's out here cutting 4 or 5 days. Then I'll make a video of this thing in action. But the first impression after 30 minutes of use is that it works great. 30 bucks makes it look like a ball field. Make a hot chick happy. The remainder of the video will show in detail how I made this thing. I just wanted to show the finished product first so you could decide if you wanted to invest another 3 minutes of your life. To make the end caps, I'm taking a 4-inch hole saw, a piece of old 3/4 inch plywood, and I'm just going to cut out 2 end caps that are 4 inches in diameter. When I'm doing this job, I normally start from one side. I go about halfway through. You can see that hole is through. Now I'll flip the plywood over, finish from the other side. It makes it easier to extract this little puck from that tool. Now I'm going to drill a 1/4 inch hole on each end, approximately 4 inches in from the end. And in the name of having it relatively straight, I'll put my drill hole right here at the bottom of the lettering. Since the lettering is straight on the piece of PVC, I'll drill my 2 holes and I'll have a spot to attach the bolts. I decided to use 1/2 inch EMT for attachment from the roller to the lawnmower. So I had to smash the ends down so I could put holes in them. And whenever I have to smash an end down on something round like this, I normally just take a sledgehammer, lay it on the ground, then I hit it with this little guy. So in this case, you see I smashed that end down. This is the end that will actually go on the roller. So I have to drill a hole in here. That's 180 degrees out of phase with the hole in the back, so I can have some way to attach it to the tractor. On each end, when attaching the tongue to the PVC, I put a flat washer on top of the nylock nut, and then I put the 1/2 inch EMT, another flat washer, and then the nylock nut on top. So I have a nice tight little sandwich there. I wanted to bend the EMT where it meets the tractor, so I took this big crescent wrench. I just put it on the end here, cranked down on it. That's how it ended up, so I'll do the same thing to the other side. I bent it too far, so now I'm going to come in with this big channel locks and just straighten it out. In the course of building this, I decided not to use the chain. I have a bunch of these hooks, so I went and hooked this to the back of the tractor, and there was a little bit of interference on top. So I took the grinder, just ground the top off. I just fitted it to the tractor a moment ago. It fits fine, it'll hang up and it swivels nicely. So that'll give me a nice, easy way to hook this lawn roller to the tractor. Now I have the main body built, so I'll put a plug in one end. But this is what the hitch looks like. I just put 2 fender washers between the pieces of EMT on each side, and then I left it so that it can move around, but there's a little bit of resistance there, so it should stay home. In an effort to make a tight fit for the plug, I put a couple wraps of electrical tape around the outside diameter. I have the plug seated. Now I pre-drilled 4 holes at roughly 12, 6, 9, and 3. And I'm going to use 2-inch drywall screws and put 4 screws into the end cap. Now that the end cap is installed and screwed in, I'll flip this unit over. I have it filled with gravel. As you can hear and see, it's raining now, so I won't be able to use this today. But this design is basically for proof of concept. I'm going to put the second plug on here. And if this thing works as intended and she's happy with it, in the next week or so I'll pull the plug off of one end, dump the gravel out, and replace it with concrete. As you can see and hear, it's raining today, so I won't be able to put this thing in action. But the pipe is filled with stone, and now I'm just putting the second end plug on. My prototype lasted for about 15 minutes of mowing. In that time it was making some beautiful stripes. And when I built this thing, I used a sewer pipe because that's what I had. And I was concerned that not using Schedule 40 or Schedule 80 PVC, the thing would break. You can see how thin that is compared to PVC. But what I'm going to do now is take the gravel out. I bought some 1/4-inch diameter, 6-inch long carriage bolts, and I'm going to put the bolt all the way through that pipe and then fill the pipe with concrete. And I believe at that point, the thing will be robust enough to finish the job. I'm going to reuse this pipe for the concrete version. So I took the piece that broke out and I just drove a 2-inch drywall screw into it. And now I'm going to take it, put it in position here, and I'll tape it in place. And that way when it's filled with concrete, the concrete will grab a hold of those threads, and this piece should stay there for the duration. Last time I put my bolt hole 4 inches from the end, but due to the breakage I moved down 6 inches. So I have the 6-inch bolt through. On this side I made the hole larger, so the carriage bolt will fit in there snug. I'll put a washer and a nut on the other side, do the same thing on the other end, then it's time to start filling it with concrete. In preparation to fill the tube with concrete, I just took some string, tied it to the sawhorse, and I pulled the bolt out here on top. So this one has a hole, but no bolt. I'm going to fill the tube with concrete first, and then when I get up to this level, I'll put that bolt in. The technique I'm using for the concrete is I'm just going to mix small batches in this cat litter thing, and because of the shape of it, I'll be able to come over here and just pour like that, and it'll pour in there easily. I made a loose mix, the consistency of an Arby's chocolate shake, so now I'm going to dump it in the tube. It took just under 50 pounds to fill my mortar tube. I put this yellow tape around where I had the holes from before just to hold the concrete in. So now I'll put the end cap on and leave this thing sit for a couple of days, and we should be ready to put it behind a mower. The 4-inch by 48-inch piece of sewer pipe is now filled with concrete. It has end caps on it. It has the bolt going through it on each end. So I laid it down in the orientation that it will be in when it's actually doing its work. I'll just leave it sit here for 2 days, then I'll hook it up and let it do its thing. For the tongue, I used 1/2-inch conduit that I just pounded the ends flat, and I put this hook on there, and I had to chop the end off so it would clear the hitch on her John Deere. And those pieces of conduit are 36 inches long.